from the Hannibal TV.com, coming at you with my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. As WWE is in my area this weekend for SmackDown tonight, The Undertaker thing last night, Elimination Chamber tomorrow night, and Raw on Monday night. And by the way, since the start of the pandemic, WWE has only come to the Ottawa, Montreal area like once. So this area is starving for wrestling, so I would expect that there would be good turnouts. Dave reported in this that there's 7,000 tickets sold for Raw on Monday, which is good for this market. The last time Raw was here, I believe, was in 2001. They had 12,000, but wrestling was a lot more popular then. So let's jump into this. WWE is apparently hoping to sell the company for $9 billion right now, according to Bloomberg, which is a financial company, I guess. This was just reported. Apparently, the leading people that are going to buy it is either Endeavor, along with a partner, and Endeavor currently owns UFC, or the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia, that is valued at $620 billion. And I truly believe the real reason, and this is just my opinion, that The Rock is not at WrestleMania is in case the WWE is sold to Saudi Arabia. He wouldn't want the negative potential backlash of working for a Saudi Arabian company. I'm just saying that because he really works hard to keep his image clean, and they're worth $620 billion. There's no doubt that they probably would have already tried to get him for one of their crown jewel pay-per-views or whatever you want to call them. And I'm sure they could offer him more money than he would make on a movie. But I would think that might make the most sense as far as why he wouldn't wrestle, to be perfectly honest with you, because I'm not buying this. This is a video of what he looked like yesterday. I'm not buying this. I'm not in shape to have a fake wrestling match crap. That doesn't make any sense when they've been talking about him and Roman Reigns for years. But I'll digress on that. I hope it sells and make it more wrestling more interesting, because it sucks. Like, I find it so unentertaining right now. At least if it sells, there's a chance whoever the new owners are going to make it better, because it's crap right now. Let's get into the further news. Apparently, regarding the Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn main event tonight, the plan was always to have Zayn lose and then Jey Uso turn on him and make it the Usos versus Zayn and Owens at WrestleMania. If they want, the other plan is to turn the WrestleMania main event into a three-way with Cody, Roman, and Zayn. However, I don't see that happening. The other thing they bring up here is Zayn. He was at the Valentine's Day Montreal Canadiens game doing an ice hockey accuracy shooting competition thing where he missed all the targets but one. One thing about that is everyone's reporting on it like there was a crowd there, but I watched it and either the crowd wasn't saying anything at all when he was out there or getting no reaction, or they shot it before the crowd came in. I mean, I know that people in Montreal like their own wrestlers, so I can only imagine they filmed the segment before the crowd came in. However, they were using the arena microphones. But Meltzer's reporting it as if it happened when there was a crowd there. So maybe there was a crowd there and he just got no reaction. I have no idea. I can tell you that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens don't even have a percentage of the aura in Quebec that the Rougeau name had, but wrestling's different now in WWE. Didn't hire Jacques Rougeau's son when he had his tryout, even though he's 6'7", 300 pounds. Girls love him. And at one point he could do a 350 flip. But who knows what their reasoning was. Valerie Coleman says superstar Billy Graham, her husband, has to pay $200 a day right now for his medical treatment, and they have a GoFundMe set up. The hearing has come back in his ears, which he hasn't had hearing for a few months now due to an ear infection. But you have to talk very loudly for him to hear. Apparently, there's 13,795 tickets out with the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view tomorrow, and secondary market value is $41, which Meltzer says is actually really low. So there's not as much of an interest as expected, since it's the first pay-per-view in Montreal in a very long time. Can't remember the last pay-per-view they had there. The ticket wasn't as hot as originally expected. Although even though that arena can hold probably 28,000-ish, I'm sure they're going to call it a sellout no matter what they get in there, and I'm sure it's not going to be a terrible crowd. But definitely not an instant sellout. Ric Flair says that there's talk of a Real Housewives of Wrestling show on Fox or Netflix involving his wife, Randy Orton's wife, Kurt Angle, and Jake Hager's wife. The Rock's daughter, Simone Johnson's name has been changed from Ava Raine to just Ava. Matt Riddle has been off TV and not wrestling more than 60 days, which leads Dave Meltzer to believe it's likely his second drug test suspension. They don't suspend people for weed. It's usually a fine. So unless they're making a special exception for him, could be another substance. Madison Square Garden has a 40% off sale right now for WWE tickets for their March 12th show that aren't selling well. There's only about 6,000 tickets sold. We keep hearing how hot Roman Reigns is and how hot Sami Zayn is. But Madison Square Garden, 6,000 pre-sold tickets with a show less than a month away. Billy Graham used to sell that out 22,000 regularly and fill up the felt for him as well. In a ridiculous lawsuit, MLW has an antitrust lawsuit against WWE that's been thrown out by U.S. District Court Judge Edward J. Davila, I guess. And this is MLW claiming that a senior vice president in WWE told the vice executive that Vince McMahon wanted Vice to stop airing MLW content. I actually had looked up what the rating was for MLW on Vice, and it was 0.01. The lowest rating you can get. I wonder if that has anything to do with why they don't want to air your content. Dark Side of the Ring, to my knowledge, has never got that low of a rating. And I'm sure if MLW was getting a higher rating, Vice would have given them more of a chance. But the bottom line is the top people in MLW haven't changed for years. And to me, it's a very stale product that doesn't seem to run much either. They recently got another TV show on another channel and are getting 0.01 ratings. So it's not I don't think it's WWE's fault they're not popular. They actually have a better case against AEW because it knocked them down one notch further from the quote unquote TV companies. Because once AEW came in, MLW went down one more. I guess you could say, I guess WWE's number one, AEW number two as far as TV impact. WOW gets higher ratings than Impact. WOW, I would put above Impact as a TV company. Then you could put MLW and New Japan. NWA still doesn't have a TV deal. To my knowledge, they just air on YouTube and other online platforms. Cody Rhodes is going to be teaming with Gallows and Anderson on some house shows next month. They haven't done much since coming back from Impact. At one point, they were making $750,000 a year. Crazy the amount WWE pays these days. And by the way, I've wrestled Luke Gallows before. And he busted me open the hard way by accident back when he was doing his freaking Deacon gimmick in Deep South Wrestling. And I do like Luke Gallows, by the way. I think he's a really nice guy. The Raw in Ottawa that I talked about at the top of this has 7,072 tickets out right now. The arena holds 19,000. The March 4th house show in Toronto has only about 4,000 tickets sold right now, which is pretty bad for Toronto. There's a show in Syracuse the same night that only has around 2,000 tickets sold. Syracuse is only about 3 hours from where I am. In ratings news, Power Slap got a 0.09 rating last week. AEW did 0.27 from Laredo, Texas, in front of 3,100 paid, which Meltzer notes WWE does a lot better than that in that market. So it's kind of considered a disappointment in that market. There's a lot of Hispanic fans that traditionally go to shows there, according to Meltzer. NXT did a 0.15 rating, which is good for NXT. Raw was down. The big confrontation from Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes did not pop a rating. Raw did a 0.47 rating from the Barclays Center, 9,700 paid. Rampage, 0.12 rating. Young Rock, 0.22 rating. SmackDown, 0.64 rating from Uncastleville. I don't even know how to pronounce this. From Connecticut, let's just say. They had 5,800 paid. Nikki Bella Says I Do did a 0.07 rating. Women of Wrestling did a 0.06 rating. And Impact, New Japan, and MLW all did 0.01 ratings. So you could add up Impact, New Japan, and MLW's rating, and it wouldn't even be half of what Women of Wrestling did. Yet as I said, I'm a fan of women's wrestling, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like it. But Women of Wrestling is doing double the combined rating of Impact, New Japan, and MLW. And all we hear about is Impact, New Japan, and MLW in the news, and we hardly ever hear stuff about WOW. So I find that like people are purposely trying to bury it within the wrestling industry. But I'm giving it credit. AEW news: Tony Khan appeared on the Dan Le Batard show and heavily hyped that there's a war going on with WWE, saying it's quote unquote very real and the two sides hate each other, end quote. Dave Meltzer points out that makes a good headline but the concern level is probably very different for WWE than 1 year ago, as there's a greater gap between the two sides. And if you look at live attendance per show in the same market that was competitive at one point, WWE is now way ahead of them. This is interesting, and this is actually sad, that the March 15th AEW Dynamite taping in Winnipeg only has 6,500 tickets out, including comps, and they're having a 50% or a buy one, get one free ticket sale on right now. So I honestly thought that Chris Jericho returning to Winnipeg for the first time since he was in WWE for a Dynamite taping, and then you have Kenny Omega and Don Callis on the same show, that, I mean, this arena holds close to 20,000. I thought it would have been an instant sellout, but they're having a buy one, get one free ticket sale. I mean, 6,000 tickets for Dynamite is good, but it's Chris Jericho in Winnipeg. I thought he was like Mr. Winnipeg. He's got to be the most famous person from Winnipeg right now. So I'm surprised. And Winnipeg's a big wrestling city that hasn't had a TV taping for a while, since at least before the pandemic. So again, I'm shocked. Jeff, in Jerry Jarrett's news, fortunately, he passed away at 80 last week. He had cancer of the esophagus and had been undergoing chemotherapy and radiation treatments that ended up being too hard on his heart, according to friends of his. He had previous heart problems. Apparently, he sold the Memphis territory to Jerry Lawler when he got out of the Memphis wrestling business for $250,000. So someone was asking that the other day. He was also beyond like the Memphis wrestling legacy that he had, where he averaged in the 70s, 7,000 people every Monday night in Memphis, not to mention all the other towns he ran, and good crowds up into the late 80s and even drawing like 2,000 or 3,000 in the early 90s. He started TNA in 2002, basically with Jeff, as he discussed in his interview with me, Jeff basically begging him to start this company because Jeff had burnt his bridges with WWE, but he ended up deep in debt, and they sold the company to Dixie Carter, which created heat with Jerry and Jeff, because Jerry, as he explained in my interview, was talking to Russians that were going to buy the company and wanted to make Oleg Prudis, Vladimir Kozlov, who is a friend of mine, by the way, and I've wrestled before in Deep South and trained with. They wanted to take over the company, but Jeff insisted on selling to Dixie, so Jerry ended up publicly taking Oleg Prudis, Vladimir Kozlov to WWE. And Jeff sold to Dixie, and they never talked for years, and he hated Dixie Carter. He absolutely hated Dixie Carter. And he claims that his heart issues from around that time were related to stress from Dixie and Jeff Jarrett. Billy Two Rivers, a Canadian Mohawk wrestler from the past, passed away February 12th. UFC is changing up their contracts, adding in that disputes will have to be settled by a neutral arbitrator party rather than going straight to legal situations. And there's going to be clauses in the contract preventing fighters from participating in class action lawsuits, because there's several class action lawsuits against UFC right now. They're not known for treating their fighters the best. They're a very financially successful company. I mean, they still have the $50,000 bonuses despite inflation. Haven't they had these 50,000 bonuses for like 25 years? At least 20 years. And things cost a lot more now, but the bonuses have not. And UFC makes a lot more money now, and it's still only a $50,000 bonus for the fight of the night, knockout of the night, etc. Am I making a comeback? You might see that I'm doing a lot of interviews outside of wrestling because I find it more fun. Oh, I did like Jerry Jarrett, my friend that's commenting if I liked him. I actually considered him a friend in wrestling. I thought he was a very nice man, and I'm actually sad that he died, but he lived a great life. But I think I did a total of 3 or 4 interviews with him, 2 or 3 phone interviews, and then the long one, and I did really like him. Can I still bench press 500 pounds? No, I cannot. I have no interest. One of the reasons I don't want to wrestle, I don't want to, like, so many wrestlers die from heart complications, and carrying that much weight is not good for your heart to be strong enough to bench 500 pounds. I've done it. I can still bench press 400 pounds, but I don't want to be carrying around that much muscle. I have not seen Dynamite, so I couldn't comment on that. Jake says Impact Wrestling. Barry Horowitz wins the match. Oh yeah, Barry Horowitz is on Impact lately. I cannot stand Impact Wrestling. Truly. Pulsar Lights. I don't think you're going to see Ted Turner starting up WCW again. He's got to be getting up towards 80 if he's not in his 80s yet. Jeff Doherty does not like WWE or AEW. No gimmicks guy. This is Brett Wayne Sawyer, the brother of Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. It's going to be on the Great North Wrestling Podcast with him on Sunday at 7 p.m. That's pretty cool. And he also did an interview with the guy that wrote the Sheik's book last night. And Wednesday at 4 p.m., I'm going to be interviewing one of the original Sheik's old managers, Supermouth Dave Drayson. I am a huge original Sheik fan. Huge. Jeff says nobody cares about Sami Zayn. Well, the smart marks do. What was the highest rated wrestling show ever on TV? It was the Saturday night main event between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. I think it did like a 14 rating. That's not a 0.14, a 14 or something. And the highest rated Raw was when Vince Russo was booking. It did like an 8.1 rating, which we'll never get close to those again. By the way, I saw Vince Russo point out the great ratings Super Bowl had. So yes, people do still watch TV when something really interests them. What did I think about the double doink angle at WrestleMania 9? It got people talking. It really got people talking. And they continued that into the house shows. Because I remember there was a house show here in Ottawa in May of 92 where Doink wrestled Crush. And they had the double doink thing. Come to think of it, it was probably the Brooklyn Brawler for that house show because the Brooklyn Brawler was on that same card just to save on money. Because I know Steve Kern was the original double doink. There's an interview with Steve Kern talking about that on my channel. Jason, my day is going well. I got to interview Nick Lavery earlier today, who I'm a big fan of. A very incredible guy, special forces, and continued in the military, seeing action overseas, even after he lost a leg. Very inspirational person. And true badass, putting his life on the line and taking lives. And he's been shot in the face before. He's had a grenade to his back, just like my dad. I was telling my dad about him. And I was telling my dad, you should show your back for my channel. He doesn't want to. Because Nick, when he had it, he had really good medical care. When my dad was shot in the back, or when it was hit in the back with a grenade, it was the kind that like spewed metal shrapnel onto people. So someone burnt their hands all up, ripping it off my dad. And he's got like maybe over half an inch crater on his back where the grenade hit. I remember every time he took us to the beach or swimming when I was a kid, the looks we would get from that. The wrestling is making more money than ever. Yes, WWE is. I don't think AEW has turned a profit yet, but it's a tax write-off for the cons. But as far as actual interest, Madison Square Garden, 6,000 pre-sold. I don't know. People aren't talking about it. Like I remember the last time in the 90s when it was really big, like you'd go to the gym, people are doing like the Rock, and like it was like the cool thing to catch someone and do that. It doesn't matter. Like that was something that everybody did. They'd be doing Stone Cold impressions. I don't see anyone doing Roman Reigns impressions. Honestly, I don't think he's reached the mainstream crowd. Profits are high, but it's because there's so many new revenue sources, and they have rich fans, I guess, that are paying huge amounts of money for tickets. But I'm not saying there's not fans of it, but I don't see what's interesting about it. I mean, I'd rather watch women's wrestling than I'd rather watch WOW, to be honest, than Raw or AEW, and that's because I like watching beautiful women wrestle. And I don't like the cheesy angles. But I did see actually in AEW, there was a street fight match on Rampage, a women's tag team street fight match not too long ago, and I did put it over. It was one of the best matches I'd seen in a while, and I enjoyed it. Will I release the unreleased Lanny Poffo interview? I don't know. I have to think about that one. Don't know. I know people would want to see it. Jake, the Monday Night Wars didn't make the most money because WWE wasn't corporate. WWE has just become a massive machine, and there's so many more ways to make money than there was during the Attitude Era now, with streaming services and TV rights and Saudi Arabia paying huge money for shows. There's just way more money in wrestling now, more than in the Attitude Era. The wrestlers make more now than they made in the Attitude Era, other than the really top stars from back then. But the top stars from then would make even more now. But they pay, like, the lowest paid main roster wrestler makes $250,000 a year, and they don't have to be on the road that much. Like, for instance, there's no house shows this week. Like, there's SmackDown tonight, Elimination Chamber, and Raw on Monday. When they used to come to this area, they would do the smaller towns too. But yeah, there's hardly any house shows these days. Way less than in the past. So you work less, you're home more with your family. You're home like 4 or 5 nights a week. You're not on the road 3 weeks at a time, getting home only 3 days off. It's really easy to be a wrestler these days. Or you can be an AEW and just collect paychecks to sit at home like Lance Archer and Rusev and CM Punk, they would rather have CM Punk sit at home and pay him $3 million a year reportedly to sit at home than bring him in and make him do jobs or use him for something to get your investment back. It's crazy. Could you imagine having, and they don't want to release him either. Could you imagine a business decision like that? Tony Khan is a great boss. I would love to make. I don't think anyone makes under 100,000 a year in AEW, and I recently talked to a guy that represents numerous AEW wrestlers, and I don't even want to say, but there's one of the guys he represents that makes like 150,000 a year, and he's not worth anywhere near that much. And he said he was even surprised that it was agreed to that he would get 150,000 a year. But like, I'll go in. I'll job to Orange Cassidy. I'll job to Jungle Boy. Work 4 times a year for $150,000 US any day. I don't care. Pulsar Lights, I don't know how much the refs make. I didn't ask. But I don't think anyone's making under 100,000 in AEW. Maybe the refs make less. I really don't know. But the wrestlers don't. The lower, and AEW, they don't even run. They're running their first house show in March, right? So you wrestle once a week. Other than in very rare occasions, they tape Dynamite and Rampage on the same night. And then usually the dark and elevation tapings are also on the same days, except for rare occasions where they do them in Orlando, like they're doing Ring of Honor tapings in Orlando. It's an easy job. It's a real easy job. I mean, for someone that's had shitty jobs in their life, I would kill to make that kind of money. Billy Jack Haynes versus Haku in a real life fight. Well, I couldn't comment on that because I like them both. Nowadays, sadly, I would hate to tell you, Haku has aged a lot better and has way less health issues than Billy Jack, which, by the way, I did do a Billy Jack Haynes interview on Valentine's Day. But I'd have to say right now, Haku in their primes might be a different story. But apparently the Barbarian wants me to call him about something. That reminds me about that. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it.